2022 started on Wednesday and hosts England made the perfect start by beating Austria 1-0 in front of a sold-out Old Trafford, meaning that coach Serena Wiegman's unbeaten record since taking the job remains intact. Meanwhile, ex-England's men's captain Rio Ferdinand has encouraged the Lionesses to copy the winning method used by Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United to ensure that they win their home tournament. All of this comes as women's football continues to grow in both size and popularity. Now, given her status as one of the first female referees in the UK, I'm delighted to be joined by Janie Frampton. Janie, thank you very much for your company today, discussing, of course, the Lionesses and the future of women's footy. How do you think this has all changed? Because it strikes me that actually the popularity has happened at almost breakneck speed.
It's a really good question, because when you look at the history of women's football, you know, when you go back, it was only 1994 when the FA took over the Women's Football Association and encompassed women's football under their banner. So it wasn't that many years ago when you consider. So I guess I always believe we've been about 20 years behind, certainly the rest of Europe. But when you look at it now, it's growing absolutely rapidly, I think, for two reasons. One, mainstream TV has taken on the women's games. We've had the women's football talk shows. And I think that's really highlighted how good women's football is, because there was always a standoff. Because there wasn't the amount of money in the women's game, big TV companies and sponsors weren't prepared to invest, you know, in women's football, and somebody has just absolutely bitten the bullet and thought, we'll go for it.
So why do you think then, you mentioned there that it used to be the case that Europe were a lot more at ease with women's football than perhaps we were. Is that a cultural thing, do you reckon?
Yeah, do you know, when we go back, I think the reason we were behind the times for a long, long time in this country, they just weren't ready for women's football or women in football. And I think that became a massive barrier for a lot of years until the FA, they started to invest in it. And when you consider, we used to have a women's Premier League, combination leagues, regional leagues, but we had no foundation to women's football pyramid at all. All of that had to be created and developed. So we were a long way behind, but it took a lot of really good, talented people driving it, and the FA did have to start investing into it. We didn't get it right every step of the way, of course we didn't, but we were getting there. We were getting there at quite a breakneck speed.
So what differences, you must get asked this all the time. In fact, I wonder if it's the most asked question for anyone in women's football, but what differences are there between refereeing the women's game and the men's game? Because, you know, strikes me, kicking a ball can be done by either sex pretty easily. I don't wish to diminish the quality of those on the pitch, mind.
Yeah, and it's not quite that simple. So I always used to say that actually refereeing the women's football was my passion, refereeing men's football was the challenge. So when you look at the two games, we must always remember not to compare them like for like, because they're two different games. When you look at the physiology of men and women, they're completely different. So when you look at the man's game, it is going to be stronger, more strength, more stamina behind the ball, more long ball, more high ball, more heavily weighted ball. When you look at the women, it's actually a far better game to watch because it's very technical, very often ball to feet. And of course, the women have got stronger because they're athletes now, but it is more technical. So this is the two differences in the game. And of course, I think there's the obvious difference that people notice. Women just get on with it. You know, we don't get the cheating in the women's game like we get in the man's game. Although I have always said that maybe over the years, as more money comes into the women's game, that might spoil it. And I do hope not, because I feel it's played in a really sportsmanship manner at the moment.
Well, do you know what? I imagine most of my viewers are sat there nodding their heads like that Churchill dog, because I tell you what, some of the performances on the pitch, you know, the acting, it's terrible. It's like, it's not Hollywood, it's utterly cartoon. But how likely do you think it is that we're going to see our girls actually manage to win the Euros?
You know, it's a great question. And how many times have we seen in tournaments that the team that win the tournament start slowly and they build and they get better as the tournament goes on and on? We see that so many times in men's tournaments as well as women. And I can see that in this women's tournament. You know what? Wednesday night was a fabulous showcase event. Of course it was. Amazing for women's football and amazing that we've hosted that in this country. Not the best game in the world. Austria made, us work hard and Austria looked dangerous at times. 1-0 is not a big win, but we got the 3 points. That's all we needed from that game. So I can see us really growing in confidence and stature as the tournament goes on. And it will help us manage expectations. People won't go absolutely mad with one, say, 3 or 4-0 win for the first game. I think that's it. We've got it in the bag. Because they can see we still have to work for it, and I know our girls will work for it. And I'm really, really confident that we'll be up there.
Well, we'll see. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Because I tell you what, I don't think the men's game are going to be winning it anytime soon. But that was the former referee, Janie Frampton there. Thank you very much for your time.